Can we get into All Fours by Miranda July? Because this was excellent. I had the best time with this book. And to think, a book like this wasn't even on my radar until the Canongate Influencer Social. They had like a stack of them on a table, and I think I took the last one because I saw it out of the corner of my eye and was like, yoink. And I'm so glad I did, because this was a great book. And something that's been hilarious as well is seeing other people's scandalized reviews on the internet. People are upset, and I don't know why. In fact, well, I do know why, and I think that's why a book like this is so important. It's no secret that our world oppresses women. Every day our value system towards women is measured on things like youth and beauty, and so nobody is really jumping in to tell stories about older women, specifically sexual gratification in older women, because when you reach a certain age, you aren't dead from the waist down. It's just nobody ever feels like those stories are worth telling, and so books like this are so important. And I found it so refreshing. I had somewhat hoped that we as a society had moved on slightly from like back in the 60s and 70s, when The Valley of the Dolls was like one of the most controversial things ever published, and people were horrified at the mere idea that women could be sexual. And this doesn't seem to be any different, because I've seen people call this book like perverse, like disgusting, oh, it's too graphic. It really isn't. Honestly, it could have gone deeper. It truly could have done. So our main character is 45. She's going on a road trip from LA, where she lives with her husband and their child, and she's on her way to New York, and she's renovating this like motel room, and it's where she first comes across Davey. And Davey is very much the catalyst for change in her life, because he ignites this sort of sexual awakening in her, because ever since she's been married, she has not felt that way again. Like, she thought it was just like relegated to her youth, and that she was never going to feel so like empowered by her own physical body. And it really takes her on a journey. And right when it got to a point where I thought, okay, we're really putting Davey on a pedestal, we're giving him a bit too much praise, let's be sex positive in a way that doesn't glorify a man, bring in the sapphic spice. I was here for it. I was so here for it. She, I mean, spoiler alert, if you have any desire to read this book, she has an intimate relationship with a woman in her 60s, and that sort of affirms her idea that it's not really about one particular man or one particular relationship. She can just do whatever she wants to, essentially. Like, she doesn't owe anything to anyone. And I just thought, what a constructive takeaway message that this demographic will find really useful. There are lots of older women who read, lots of women in their 40s, 50s and 60s who could probably draw a lot of strength from a book like this. I thought it was terrific. I thought it was great how in the acknowledgements, Miranda July talks about all of the doctors in women's science, and the also lived-in experiences of older women that she had spoken to and interviewed to garner research for a story like this. And you can tell it was fully realized. There were these great conversations about the hormonal life cycle of a woman. There was the graph that was shown at one point that shows how estrogen completely plummets as you get to the menopause, whereas like a man's testosterone sort of plateaus out and barely drops at all. That sort of like annoying biological double standard. And the implications that has on our main character, where she thinks, okay, I'm perimenopausal now, but when I hit the menopause, do I just lose libido completely? Like, it's terrifying to her. And even though like I'm reading this as a man, like I felt that, and I like really empathized with her seeing her own mortality and her viewing sex as like an expression of her identity. And I just thought it was so articulate and beautiful. Is the book perfect? No, it definitely drags its heels in places. I think an editor definitely could have tightened this up a bit, maybe take out 50 plus pages, just because there's some sections where you're like, okay, we don't need to spend too much time here. I will say as well, the characters reach conclusions that already felt quite obvious to me. Maybe I underestimate the naivety of everyday humans. I was kind of surprised at how long it takes them to arrive at the realization that we could just have an open marriage. Like, oh, on a Monday you can sleep with whoever, on a Tuesday I can sleep with whoever, we just don't bring them home. That should have been their arrangement from the start. I just found it strange that this liberal couple in LA who raise a non-binary child, how fabulous, were in this like traditional Christian style marriage. Like, no, if sex is this important to you in your relationship, have an open marriage. Like, that was such an own goal for me. Like, I found it strange that we spent so long trying to get there. It reminded me a lot of Big Swiss. I know I made that comparison about a month ago, and I think someone was in my comments like, how dare you, they're completely different books. For me, they both predicate on the idea of woman in her 40s is in a crisis, and the story pans on from there, and they both have this very dry, very black comedy to them, which I always enjoy. I can see how people reading this could maybe take it a different way and be quite triggered by the book, but I thought it was beautiful. Should you read all fours? Hell yeah, this might be my favorite book that you published, Canon Gay. Like, this was really, really good. I can see why it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. I think it lost to The Safekeep. I've not yet read The Safekeep. It's because the paperback is a step back cover. We're not getting into that. I'll buy the hardback at some point and I will read it, but this was well deserved. I thought this was brilliant.